So how does cessationism affect meaning in life?
Well, pessimists think that death not only detracts from our sense of meaning in life, death just straight up justifies despair. My grandpa used to say he was a happy guy. I don't know why he always said this. He always said life sucks and then you die. Well, the pessimist reasons life sucks because you die. So what's the point of anything if all just comes to nothing? And a good
And that,
spokesman
that
for
kind of reminds me, yeah, that kind of reminds me of Dr. Craig's like argument.
yes, we're going to come to him in just a second because he does articulate this view quite well. But Leo Tolstoy also does in his classic essay, A Confession. I don't know if you've ever read that. It's a beautiful essay. He talks about the despair he felt before he came to believe in God, a despair that almost drove him to suicide. Well, one of the parts of that essay that stood out to me when I read it was this parable he gives. He gives this parable of a traveler who's being chased by this wild beast. He jumps into a well to escape this being eaten by this wild beast, and he's clinging to a twig in the wall of the well. But when he looks down, he sees a dragon with open jaws about ready to swallow him. So he's screwed either way. But even worse, two mice start gnawing away at the twig he's clinging to.
Mm.
Uh, but then Tolstoy adds this twist. He says, in that terrifying moment, the traveler notices a few drops of honey on the leaves of the twig, and so he stretches out to lick them. Um, but this is his main point. Because of how terrible the situation is, the traveler it was such that the traveler could not taste the sweetness of honey anymore. It no longer tasted sweet to him. And Tolstoy's point is just that we're all like this unlucky traveler, and that the inevitability of death takes the sweetness out of life. And so, I mean, you can kind of think of it in more of a concrete way. Think of like a death row inmate's last meal. No matter how lavish the meal might be, it's easy to see how it would be a letdown, right? Not because of anything about the food, but because each bite brings him closer to the meal's end and death itself. So this is kind of
Mm.
Tolstoy's point about how death sort of robs life of meaning and even some of the simple pleasures in life. Um, but there are other atheists who give expression to the more pessimistic view. Chief among them is Arthur Schopenhauer. In fact, he's kind of officially called the pessimistic philosopher sometimes. So you could find the pessimist view in his writings, but I think more common is you see pessimism being articulated by theists. They argue that this view of death, that's just cessation, they think that leads to pessimism. So here are two quotes. The first comes from Peter Kreeft. So he says this: because death exists, because life ends in death, because the final fact about life is death, life is either way more meaningful or way less meaningful than we usually think. Life cannot be meaningful in the short run and meaningless in the long run, because the long run is the meaning of the short run. Okay, so he's giving expression to this idea that, well, if it just ends in death, well, that just kind of takes all the wind out of the sails of life. And the same point is made by Craig, as you mentioned in his very widely anthologized chapter. What's the name of it? The Absurdity of Life Without God. And so, yeah, I've got this representative quote here where he basically says the same thing. He says, if each individual person passes out of existence when he dies, then what ultimate meaning can there be given to his life? Does it really matter whether he ever existed at all? And because our lives are ultimately meaningless, the activities we fill our lives with are ultimately meaningless. The long hours spent in the study at university, our jobs, our interests, our friendships, all these are, in the final analysis, utterly meaningless. So, the core idea in these quotes, or of pessimism itself, I guess, is just that if atheism is true, death is just the total annihilation of the self, then honestly coming to terms with that fact should inspire in us a crippling sense of existential angst and despair. So that's pessimism.
Hello, Cameron here. Thanks for watching this little clip. If you want more, there's actually a whole interview this clip came from. Just click the link on the screen. Oh, and by the way, we post 2 to 3 new videos a week. So if you're interested in apologetics at all, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you can catch our latest content. Oh, and then lastly, remember that Christianity is true.